And we welcome you into the Spotlight on this Tuesday. Thanks so much for joining us. My name is Drew Brent. If you're in the market to buy or sell your home, give us a call today. It's 479-968-5668, or you can cruise on over to russellvilleliving.com. Hey, if you missed our interview with Sheriff Shane Jones yesterday, you can check that out on Spotify, Google Play, iTunes, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. You can also find it on YouTube and in the Facebook Watch archive. Today, however, we have a very special guest. In his first sit-down interview in quite some time, he's the man that I say puts the super in superintendent, Dr. Mark Gotcher. Welcome to the Spotlight, sir.
Thank you very much, Drew. It's an honor to be here.
I'm honored to have you here. First of all, let me say, as a Dardanelle Sand Lizard alum myself, congratulations and welcome back to Sand Lizard country. This is not your first go-around with the Sand Lizards.
That is correct. My second education job was I was hired as the high school and middle school choir director in 91, 92. I'm adding that. Is that like 30 years ago? And
we don't do math around here.
We don't do math. So yeah, my first high school choir position was at Dardanelle, and had great memories, worked with some great folks. In fact, I met the other day one of the teachers who is still there, who was on staff when I was there, and it was such a joy to see her, and she gave me a big hug, and during the tour that we had on my second interview. So yeah, I'm returning to a place where I taught before, so it's exciting.
Take me through the last year emotionally. We don't need to get any kind of specifics.
Sure.
We just can talk about, there have been some ups, there have been some downs.
Yes.
Let's talk about that.
You bet. I think for all of us, COVID presented a set of dynamics and emotions that none of us had experienced.
Sure.
It challenged all school leaders, whether you're a principal, superintendent, central office, and the impact that it had on teachers. You know, the whole dynamic of seeing the virtual learning versus the in-class learning. We thought we could do it synchronous, and then we learned we could not do it. So teachers were doing two jobs, and it just created an incredible sense of just anxiety and restlessness. And Drew, we saw so much disconnect from our students, and it was just really a challenge. And so as that affected all school leaders in Arkansas and the nation, in fact, you go through some insecurities because, like at an NCAA Final Four game referee, no matter what call you make, 50% of the people are going to really not like you.
Right.
And that's how I felt, and that's how many of us felt, whether it was making a decision on masks, making a decision to eliminate virtual learning, whatever the case may be. There was just a lot of emotion, and that was really difficult. It put a lot of unexpected anxiety on school leaders across Arkansas.
You know, from a standpoint of just trying to process all of that, can you take me through your process when you're saying, I've got to make this decision?
Yeah, that's good.
And students are my number one priority, but there is a bit of a balancing act here too. How did you do it?
That's such a great question. I was on daily Zooms with the 6A and 7A superintendents across the state. I was also on the governor's task force, which was another group of superintendents, State Department of Education folks. So we were getting a lot of valuable information from the Department of Health and the governor's office. We were getting a lot of just problem solving in these weekly Zoom meetings with these superintendents. Well, this is what Jonesboro's doing, and it's working. Okay, then we're all going to try it. Or, hey, this was working in Russellville. And so we were all learning from each other. One of the unintended benefits of that whole journey was superintendents got closer together. We became more of a team than we had ever really been before.
Sure.
We would see each other at conferences, or we would call
Right.
each other on the phone, but we were truly connected, and that was really a cool benefit. So you had multiple voices, good voices, whether it was Department of Health, fellow superintendents, Department of Education, the Arkansas Administrators Association, and honestly, Drew, you had to take the best information, present it to your leadership team, present it to your school board, present it to your parents, And then we had to make just the best decision we could, knowing that there was going to be a part of the community that would not be happy. But we always felt like we made the best decision based on the information given.
I believe it was Eleanor Roosevelt who said, "You're damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't."
Agreed.
And I don't know if she coined it, but I know that she said it.
Yeah.
When you know that you're in a situation that's a catch-22, is there something that you do to try to find some sort of peace, balance there?
A lot of prayer. I think I prayed more in this last year than I've ever prayed in my life. The other thing that I did is, going back to the superintendent colleagues, I leaned on them more than I've ever leaned on my colleagues before. And I also learned the power of rest, because your mind in this pandemic and in just the struggles of being a leader, I had to literally lay my cell phone aside and give myself a day of rest, which is what we should do,
Right.
for all people. But there were times where I could not turn it off. You don't sleep as well. I mean, I've talked to so many superintendents that were losing sleep, they were losing weight, whatever they were losing.
Sure.
And I really had to find a day of rest, and that helped. I would get up earlier, even though I felt like I needed the rest, and I would spend time in my reading chair, reading for pleasure or reading for work. And I really found that rest was a valuable tool in helping me cope with the challenges of this past year.
We've talked about some moments where there were some downs, but in that same token, that 12 months, there have been some incredible moments for you. I want to take you back just a little bit.
Sure.
When the announcement was made on social media for the Dardanelle superintendent's position, that they had narrowed the candidates lists to 7, and there was your name among with, by the way, incredible candidate list, an absolutely incredible candidate list. And then it was narrowed to 2. And you watch on social media this explosion of, "Please hire Dr. Gotcher." I was one of those who was, "Please hire Dr. Gotcher." Talking to my school board friends, "Please, please." And you see all of this and the comments and the feedback, the excitement. How do you process that part? Because in the same way you have to process some of the negativity, this had to be at least somewhat overwhelming.
It was. First of all, let's go back a little bit. I didn't know that I had the capacity to be a superintendent. I had begun coaching and consulting, executive coaching and consulting business called superintendentleadership.com. And I began to work with a couple of districts and began to just build a website, making videos on how to equip school leaders. And I knew, because I was retired, I could not work in a public school for 6 months. Teacher retirement requires a 6-month waiting period if you're below a certain age, and I'm below that age. And so, Drew, I really call it a capacity. Another way to say it was a seed. I knew that I wasn't finished with education, and I want to talk about my why and my personal mission statement when the time is right, because I think that's important to this conversation. But that capacity, that seed, began to grow. And when I did submit my name to be a candidate for this possible position, that seed grew more quickly. And Drew, when I sat down with that school board and they interviewed me, and the welcomeness that they offered, the peace in that room, it was, if not the most, one of the most peaceful interviews I've ever experienced. And I was going to use that interview to help me determine if I really was going to continue to submit my name. I felt that was important. I think every superintendent, you're not only being interviewed, but you also interview the board, because
Certainly.
a superintendent is the board's only employee, if
Right.
you think of it like that. And so I felt at peace. And so I went home and talked to my sweet wife, Laura, and I said, something is growing. And I said, but I'm happy either way. I can continue serving these two school districts and going to expand my consulting business. And if it doesn't happen, that's okay. And if it does happen, I will say yes. And Drew, when I went back on that all-day interview on that Thursday and began to walk through the campuses, began to see the kids' faces, began to see and hear the questions and the conversations that I had the privilege of engaging with this wonderful faculty, that capacity continued to grow and continue to grow. And it truly was a powerful experience. And so when President Sosby called me Friday evening, she offered me the job, and I couldn't answer. I did not expect to get emotional, to see the past year's events come to this moment. I said, give me just a second. And I took a big swallow and I accepted. But it was just a beautiful experience.
When all of this happens, and it happens so quickly, at least for the viewing public, do you take a step back and you look at here's a better way of asking, do you have the capacity to take a step back and look at this and kind of see the semi-absurdity and yet the happy ending of it all?
Well, I think back to your previous question about seeing all the social media, and it absolutely is overwhelming. I don't look at Facebook that much. Twitter, Instagram are maybe my only two platforms because there's so much professional learning that I can have. Twitter's a great tool for professional learning when you follow, the education gurus around the nation. But people were sending me some comments, and I don't like to let my mind go there because receiving a compliment is fun, but when you see so many, it does become overwhelming. And it seemed absurd. It just seemed, just so surreal. And I returned 200 text messages before I went to bed around 11 o'clock Friday night of just well-wishers from all over the state. Sure. It was truly a beautiful experience. And I honor the Dardanelle School Board for giving me a chance, because I'm looking forward to the journey.
Well, I will tell you this on behalf of everyone who graduated from Dardanelle, a guy who has an association with Dardanelle. Mark, I'm glad you're here.
Thank you.
We've talked a lot about the past. I want to talk a little bit about the present and the future.
Yeah.
This is from your Twitter, your personal mission statement. It says, I'm quoting here, my mission statement: I am a people over programs leader who strives to connect leaders to the people they serve. I desire to grow and learn as a leader, but my greatest joy is developing leadership in others, because great leaders grow leaders. Leadership is about serving others. Expand on that.
Sure. I believe the capacity for leadership is in everybody. Whether a kindergarten student is leading their class down the hall, going to the lunchroom, and getting to be the #1 student that day, or whether you're a teacher in front of a class of 20 plus students, being able to lead, and as we talked earlier off camera, being able to change a family tree. I believe the capacity for leadership is in everybody. Years ago, I was striving to be a better leader, going to school, reading books, and I was really, leadership is about me. What can I do to grow and be a better leader? And I learned that leadership is not about me. It truly is about others. John Maxwell said once that everybody communicates, but few connect. I jokingly say that I communicate with my wife all the time, but sometimes I just don't connect. And
my wife would say the same thing.
All husbands can say that. And so I believe also part of that connecting is connecting with leaders is more than just having a conversation. It is helping birth inside of them their why. When I think back through my past year with just the challenges of COVID and all the other external things, I learned that my why is not being defined as a superintendent. My why is truly about serving people. Whether I chose to sell insurance or chose to work at Lowe's,
Right.
My why would not change, Drew. It is about serving others. And so, if I had written this mission statement 20 years ago, I think you would have seen more of a selfish mission statement. But leadership grows in us not because of our successes, but through our struggles.
Mm-hmm.
And through those struggles, I've learned that leadership is not about me, it's about serving others.
How does that mission statement translate to the vision going forward for Dardanelle?
Oh, that's good. The Dardanelle mission statement is to, see if I can get this right, is to educate all students in an ever-changing world, help them to be productive citizens in an ever-changing world. And that ever-changing is so much more powerful. And as I read that mission statement, and I even showed that in my interview, I put that mission statement up for the school board to see, and I said, if I can't live up to that, I cannot be your candidate. And I said, but I connect to it. I showed them my mission statement. And I said, I do believe that we need to help all students become successful and productive citizens in an ever-changing world. And I said, as I have meditated on your mission statement, I believe that I can be the leader for you. And then I compared it to my own mission statement. And so you've got to begin, any good leader has to begin, what are the mission, vision, and core values of that organization? And really ask the people that are going to employ you. And then, of course, ask yourself, can I submit to this? Can I live up to these expectations? And thankfully, Drew, I feel that I can. I'm looking forward to sharing, not just leading the journey, but sharing the journey with all of our stakeholders.
What was something, you went through that second interview process where you toured the facilities and you said there were so many things that stood out to you. What was the one thing that stood out to you the most?
Going back to my old choir room?
Yeah.
That was a little, I used the word surreal earlier. I'll just say it again. It was quite surreal. I remember the emotions of being a young choir director, wanting to, produce those great choirs. The room was a little smaller than I remember.
Right.
Because it's sort of like the kid going back to your house as an adult. The ceiling seemed lower, the room seemed
Right.
smaller. And that's kind of my first impression. But it also blessed me in the sense that the room is still educating kids. The room is still instilling the love for music for kids. That was probably the best experience of the tour, except for meeting kids.
Right.
Being able to see one of my students come up to me from Russellville that is transferred to Dardanelle and said, hey, I had your wife as my science teacher. It's good to see you, Dr. Gotcher. And just seeing kids. So kids were always at the forefront
Sure.
of that. But going to the old choir room, that was pretty fun. That
Yeah.
was pretty fun.
Now, you mentioned your old choir room in Dardanelle. You were at Atkins. You were at Hector. You were obviously at Russellville. Dr. Gotcher, you have had positions with the Arkansas Department of Education. You had this consulting firm. You could have gone anywhere. Why are you here?
I came to this river valley in 1983 and came here just on a vocal scholarship, just because I wanted to be a part of Arkansas Tech. And Drew, about 10 years later, I was married. I think we had 1 or 2 children at the time. I learned that 3 miles from my doorstep when we lived north of Dover was a cemetery where all of my great-great-grandparents and great-great-aunts and uncles were buried. I had no idea I was living 3 miles from my DNA. I knew before I ever saw that beautiful gravesite of all the Gotchers that have passed on before me that I was called to this river valley. I've always felt that I've been called to be one of the gatekeepers of this river valley. Whether I lived in Dover, served in Atkins, worked in Russellville, and now the privilege of working in Dardanelle, I feel like my calling to serve others. Yeah, I did have the opportunity to go other places, but I never felt a release, because when I arrived here in '83, I remember saying, I've come home.
Yeah.
And the reason I said that, because my dad was a preacher, and we traveled all over the state, lived in Rogers, Lone Oak,
Sure.
Pine Bluff. We've lived all over. And I was kind of happy that I could move somewhere and say I don't have to move again. But I remember saying in 1983, I've come home. And I chose at that young age, before I knew my future, that something was special about the River Valley.
I find it curious because there is something here, and a lot of people who watch this show are people who are prospective buyers of homes,
Right.
obviously, who may be trying to find out why they would come to the River Valley. So I'll ask you that question. You mentioned living near your DNA, but truly, Dr. Gotcher, what is special about right here?
The people. I have friends that will be lifelong friends. My college freshman roommate now owns Pasta Grill
Right.
and has been my dearest friend through the years. It truly comes down to the people. You know, I've always said the greatest part of leadership are the people, but the most challenging part of leadership are the people.
Right.
And so, but it's not that this is a beautiful place, because it is. It's not that we have great opportunities for our kids, and we do. But ultimately, people don't leave jobs. People leave people. And I think that's true for a community. People don't leave communities, people leave people.
Mhm.
And I think people stay because of the people. And that's the reason I stay, because I have connections in this community that are short of eternal.
So, and hopefully I don't get too personal here, but no animosity?
None. My identity is not in any individual. My identity is in my Lord and in my family. And now I take everything as an opportunity to grow, and I have.
Let's change tone here a little bit. There's something about you that I noticed. I ran into you a few months ago at Sam Albright's music festival.
Yes, I was there.
And I knew that you were a music guy. I didn't know how much of a music guy.
Oh, yeah.
It's pretty much been your life outside of education, hasn't it?
It has.
Talk a little bit about that.
I love singing, all my life. And I was the kid who didn't have the Walt Disney records. And for those that are watching, a record is anyway, I'm just kidding.
It looks like a CD. And if you don't know what a CD is.
Yeah. One of my students at Center Valley said, Dr. Gotcher, that's the biggest CD I've ever seen, when I showed him an LP, a 33 and a third. Anyway, my aunt, when she converted from mono to stereo, gave me a stack of mono Beatle records. And so I have been listening to the Beatles since I was 5. So that gives you an idea of my influence. I still am a huge Beatle fan. So I think that little nugget of the seed of just that love for music, and of course the Beatles are awesome, and I'm not here to talk about the Beatles, but that really inspired me. I've always loved the music of the church. I've been a big fan of the old gospel songs, and now the contemporary, and now the worship music that is so prevalent in our churches today. And so around 18 years old, when I finished my last football game at Rogers High School, and I was never a great football player. I got writer's cramp from writing down the plays because I was that guy.
Right.
And so I took my first piano lesson. So my first piano recital was sitting beside 6 and 7-year-old little boys and girls, and here's this 18-year-old guy playing his first piano recital. So I began to pursue music seriously. While I've always enjoyed singing and leading worship in church, I've been writing songs for a long time, but I chose to pursue music education because I said, if I'm going to do this, and I had a good teacher that really coached me, if I want to get paid at what I do, you've got to get a music education degree. Even if you did become a professional musician or go full-time in the church music, she still said, Gotcher, you've got to have a music ed degree. And I did. And so, yeah, I've played guitar since I was 12, played keyboards probably, 17, 18, and took formal lessons at 18. And so I've been, Yeah, I'm a closet rock and roller. I love the classics, but I'm not afraid to listen to some of the new stuff. I won't say any artists of today, but you'd be surprised if I told you some of the artists of today that I've enjoyed because of their songwriting and their stage presence. Yeah.
You know, you talk about your love for music, and I see this totality of a person. If you went back and talked to 15-year-old Mark Gotcher, would he be surprised that you're sitting as a school administrator right now?
Yeah, if I'd asked 15-year-old Mark Gotcher what's a superintendent, he wouldn't know. He would not know. I think I learned the term superintendent sometime at Rogers when I was in high
Right.
school, and my principal and senior advisors, because I was a senior class president, I learned the phrase superintendent. I think the 15-year-old Mark Gotcher, there was music in his DNA. There was certainly leadership in his DNA that was untapped. I knew that I wanted to have something to do with music and something to do with people. But no, I don't think any kid in junior high or high school even want to be a principal. You know, they may want to be a
Right.
teacher, they may want to be, and much less a superintendent. I don't think you really understand what a superintendent does. I love it when I go into classrooms and teachers introduce me as the superintendent. Do you know what the superintendent does? And the kids have no clue. They
Yeah.
have no idea. And sometimes I have no idea.
Right, exactly. Depending on the day.
That's right.
Right, exactly. We're going to wrap up here with you, Dr. Gotcher, because
Sure.
I know you're
It's been a
limited on
privilege, by
time.
the way. Thank you, Drew.
It's been an honor to have you here too. If you had, you've got a few minutes here. Talk to the people of Dardanelle. Talk to the students of Dardanelle. What can we expect?
Absolutely. I think you're going to find someone that is transparent, someone with a strong integrity, as gentle as some people have accused me of being at times. I'm very firm in who I am as a leader. But here's what you'll also find: my desire to serve students and help them be better, my desire to serve teachers and help them lead better, my desire to work with principals and other district leaders and help them lead better. Because as I said yesterday in another interview, I truly believe with our board and with this mission statement and these incredible 2,100 students that we have an opportunity to make Dardanelle the best place for students in Arkansas. And I can't wait to get started, Drew.
I'll be right there with you, headset and all, radio gear in hand. I can't wait for the ride. Dr. Mark Gotcher,
Thank you.
thank you so much for being here,
It's
sir.
been an honor. Thank you, sir.
We'll have you back very soon.
Please do. I'll
All
be
right.
here.
Outstanding. That's Dr. Mark Gotcher. We thank him for his time, and we thank you for joining us today on the Spotlight. Remember, if you are interested in buying or selling your home, give us a call today, 479-968-5668. We'll see you right back here tomorrow.